All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And I'm excited, as always, to share with you another Warrior guest today, David Weaver. And I'll talk about him in just a second. But first, let me remind you of why you're here and what Warrior versus Zombie is all about. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is absolutely no exception. David Weaver is an amazing warrior. He's a husband, a dad, a coach, an adventurer. His 15-year warrior journey began with coaching and training individuals, small groups, and companies. He owned and ran a health and fitness studio, helping people improve their health and lives in incredible ways. Today, he helps business owners and warriors from all walks of life to create a business and life they love. His clients learn how to drastically reduce stress, design their lives to align with their highest values, and move their businesses forward while maintaining their ideal day. David's ideal day includes investing his time with family and adventures in the Washington Cascades, climbing, trail running, and split boarding. I'm not even sure what that is, but maybe you'll tell me what that is in a second. Throughout his journey, music has provided his warrior soundtrack. I love that because music is my life, but not my livelihood. And he's toured, recorded multiple albums, and performed at the Lincoln Center in New York. So that's pretty cool. So David Weaver, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things there in the West Coast, in the Washington area?
Well, thanks so much for having me, David. Yeah, things are pretty good up here. We finally got some snow up in the Cascades this past month, which has been great. We love, like I said, love spending time in the mountains, and that's split boarding is how I do that in the wintertime. And basically what that is a snowboard that's cut in half. So you can skin uphill just like backcountry skiing, where you skin uphill and then put it together and you ride down just like you would with backcountry skiing, but with a snowboard.
Okay, so to be clear, so you use the split to get up to where you're going to then come down, and then you actually snowboard down.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then that's pretty cool. I
Yeah,
guess
it clips together on the end, and then a third of the way in, and then the bindings hold the middle of the board together. So it feels just like a regular snowboard, even though it's cut all the way down the middle.
Yeah, well, I ended my skiing career, at least for downhill, when I, in college, decided that I was ready for, even though I hadn't hardly skied at all in my life, decided that I was ready to do the Black Diamond in Michigan, which probably I should have been on the bunny slope. And so I proceeded to fall down the hill, hyperextended my ACL, tore my MCL, and then
Oh man.
and then laid up in the lodge and had all of the everybody feeling sorry for me, with all my fraternity friends and everything that were there on this ski weekend. And so it turned out okay. And I avoided surgery at that point, and it's haunted me a little bit, but I had to stay away from the downhill, which is probably a good excuse and probably why I'm still standing here today.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, that's cool. So anything unique or exciting going on there in the Seattle area with you today? Or we're shut down here in Dallas. We're seeing something that that's more common in your area, with the snow and stuff. We actually have snow. It's snowing right now, and there's a little bit of ice out the window. So in our world, that pretty much shuts things down. So
Yeah. Nothing too crazy going on up here, other than my wife is gone for 4 days, and so solo parenting. I have two little girls; they're 5 and 8, and just hanging out with them pretty much for the rest of the week. Don't have a whole lot of work, and we're just gonna have some fun and we're going to go snowboarding tomorrow. So yeah, it should be great.
Well, it's awesome that you get to do that. I have 5 kids and can kind of relate, although most of the time it was me. I put 4 million miles on airlines, so it was me bailing out on my wife. So she got the opportunity to do that juggling and try to keep things moving at the same time. So I admire your tenacity, and it's great that you have an ideal day right now that enables that to occur. And I think that's part also by design. So we can talk about that as well. All right, let's take a quick break. I want to get into your story. Next segment, we'll come back. And I want to hear how you got from where you started to where you are today, as we talked about in your introduction. So let's hear a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright and our theme song, It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be right back with David Weaver and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we are back. And David, that was a nice check-in. I'm glad you're able to juggle the kids there. If we hear any screaming, we'll know that they decided their show is over or whatever. I know how that all works now these days. I'm now doing that with grandkids. So I can, as we talked about before the podcast, so I can totally relate to what you're balancing there. So I appreciate you joining us. So tell me a little bit about your story. How did you get from where you started to today?
Yeah, I was thinking about kind of where to start, and I think that it's probably useful to go back to just after high school. So you mentioned music in the introduction. Music was like, that's what I was gonna do. My mom taught me the piano when I was like 6, and then from there, basically, just music was always a huge thing. I was in regular band. I was in jazz band for 8 years. I was in rock bands, like all of these cool, ridiculous experiences. One of the things that you mentioned in going to play at Lincoln Center was because we had entered a contest when I was a sophomore in high school, and we had these ridiculously talented seniors. They were seriously amazing. They went on to like the top Texas schools for jazz. But we entered a contest, the Duke Ellington Festival, and we made it. We got in the top 10 bands in the country. And so we got to go play at Lincoln Center and like shake hands with Wynton Marsalis and go to the Iridium nightclub. Like it was such a cool experience as a high schooler. And yeah, and then playing in rock bands and like that was going to be my life. I remember one of my friends, we were talking one day and she's like, so what's your backup plan if music doesn't work out for you? And I just went, click. I just hung up on her. I was like, how dare you? But funny enough, yeah, music didn't really turn out to be something where I was what I had dreamed, and making money and doing all that stuff. Ended up buying a condo, got married, got a real job, quote unquote, working for an engineering company in IT, and just kind of stopped like altogether. Music just kind of like all of a sudden disappeared, and I didn't really realize it. Like, everybody was the same thing in my bands, everybody was getting married, like it was all just kind of happening. It's like this shift in life. And so that story, will come back around to that. But but I was working in IT, and I was like, I am so bored. I'm like completely bored out of my mind. I don't want to do this. So what do I want to do? And I'd watched my dad, working in corporate America, not really very happy. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to have like a fulfilling career where I feel like I'm helping people and it's also rewarding for me at the same time. And so I just started like, what is that going to be? I don't know. Maybe I'll be a firefighter. So I applied to become a firefighter. I get 100% on the physical and a 98.87 on the written, and still don't even get an interview. So I was like, okay, well, I guess, I'll test later. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go in special forces. So I go and apply and I do all the stuff. And then they're like, okay, here's how much you get paid. And I was like, I can't even pay my bills. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Hindsight, I'm really glad I didn't, because I don't take orders very well, which I didn't learn until like a little bit later. And then, just like trying to figure out like what is it I want to do. And I'd always been like involved in but just like hiking and being outside. And I played soccer in high school and junior high, and did weightlifting. And I was like, okay, what about like health and fitness? Like this is something that I could help people with. I like this stuff. I have a deeper interest in it because my mom has an autoimmune disease, and so there's like curiosity there, and like what's that all about? And so that is what we decided to do. My wife and I decided, hey, well, at first it was like I went and got a job at Bally's Total Fitness. And then I was like, I don't want to work here. And then we just were like, well, what if we opened our own thing? What if we just did our own thing? And so we did. And excuse me, that's when we started our health and fitness studio. And it was a wild ride. It was a great journey. And the interesting thing about that was kind of cool was we were able to it was right around the time when the big downturn was happening, like 2007-ish, 2008. And so the company I was working for in IT, they were downsizing like crazy. They went from 170 employees to 70. Somehow I still had a job because the owner liked me. I don't know why, but I was able though to just ask my boss, hey, can I go down to 30 hours a week? Hey, can I go down to 25? Hey, can I? And then just kind of slowly took my hours back as we built this thing on the side, and then created it into like a full-time thing. That's not to say though that I still remember how scary it was to like fully cut off the day job and like jump into that full time with both feet. So yeah, that's kind of all of that. Do you want me to keep going to now to right now?
Well, let's talk, just let's drill down a little bit.
Okay.
If we've gotten to today, just a couple of things. So it's fascinating. Number one, I kind of relate to the music thing. I did, the coffee houses and bars kind of thing when I was in college, and I know how music can be your life and not end up your livelihood. And that's there's a song by Harry Chapin, which was one of my favorites, called Mr. Tanner. And the chorus is, music was his life. It was not his livelihood. It made him feel so happy. It made him feel so good. He sang from his heart, all that. And so it's a great song. Anyway, I can get that didn't end up being, and I can also understand. I also find it fascinating, being a younger man like yourself, and seeing your father in corporate America and seeing how that all works out. Also, not necessarily wanting to get locked into that, 30, 40-year death march, as well. So I get that. I'm thinking my son probably, and kids probably looked at that. That's why they all seem to be a little more entrepreneurial. At least I was very entrepreneurial, just didn't realize it. But I discovered that later on, much later. And so I think all of them are kind of going, yeah, I think I'll discover this earlier. And I think that's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
tell me, one of the things that, the Warrior listeners always like to hear or understand is, what would you say are the major zombies or major challenges that you had to overcome along the way? I mean, some of those things may seem obvious, but what kind of things did you have to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I will say there are some things that I will share, but I will also say I'm very fortunate. I had a very like awesome childhood and upbringing, and like had everything going for me in all accounts, But of course, there are things like fear, because no one in my family is entrepreneurial at all, and like everybody, it's the 9 to 5, it's just the regular thing, and so definitely feeling like this is totally new and outside the norm of everything. And spending all that time, I mean, I spent it was a quick story what I said, where we went from like working IT, but I worked at that company for like 6 or 7 years while I was trying to figure out like, what do I want to do? So like it took some time to step out into that. And then also some just dumb decisions. Like I had a lot of debt at the beginning. And so, we're like, oh, cool, we both have good jobs, and like, let's get both have car payments and a condo. Oh, and let's get motorcycles. Oh, and we both still have student loans. So we had like a ton of debt. And that was for sure a challenge and learning process, because we didn't want to have all that risk when we were jumping into starting our business. So we took longer than it would have otherwise taken, because we're like, okay, well, we're going to sell stuff. We're going to get rid of things. We're going to lower that risk threshold by not having all these payments, and some of it paid off, some of it sold, all of those different things. But I would say that those were probably two of the bigger challenges, just like fear of the unknown and doing something brand new, and then making less than optimal money decisions up front and having to learn that lesson, which I think we all learn at some point, unless someone teaches us early on.
Well, let me tell you something. So, first of all, those are actually brilliant and very common, and I experienced those as well. You can be they use a fancy term, if you have a business degree or whatever, they call it leverage, right? So that's what if you're doing it and building a business, or building, investing and using leverage is a different thing. As consumers, no, it's basically we've become the two zombies that you're describing. One is the fear of the unknown, which we all have. And as we always say, as a warrior moves forward, the zombies are there to hold you back, and we're all infected, and we all have the zombie virus, if you will. 95% of the thoughts and the actions and the inclinations we have today are based in the same ones that we did yesterday. So we don't do anything if we don't move outside of our comfort zone, which is basically the fear of the unknown. Then our history becomes our destiny. And obviously that's not, I've never talked to a warrior yet that says, okay, I'm totally satisfied where I'm at and I don't want to do anything else. To me,
Yeah.
that's an equation for ending your life kind of thing. So I don't like that. The other thing you said, which was also the debt thing, again, I want to emphasize that, because a lot of warriors, we get trapped in that too. That's being part of the zombie herd. We're trained to be consumers. We're trained to be employees. We're trained to be things because that's the predominant what people are doing out there. So you've both experienced both of those and emerged into the role, the world, the purpose that you are fulfilling right now. So let's do this. I want to get into what you're doing now. I want to talk about that, and I want to hear, why you're doing what you're doing, the unique value you think you believe you provide, and I'm sure you do, and what kind of impact you're hoping to have. So let's take another quick break. We'll hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, our theme song, and we'll be right back with David Weaver and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we are back, and David, I really I can relate and align with a lot of your journey there. It's probably why we're continuing to be connected. You've shared a little workshop with us a while back on our Connect and Thrive mastermind, and I appreciate that. And so, but tell me, know a little bit about what you're doing today, but let's talk about why you're doing what you're doing, the value you provide. If anything were possible, what kind of impact would you have?
Yeah. So we have the gym. It's about 7 years into it, really, like almost 9 or 10 years into like that industry. And one of the guiding questions that I have been asking myself and that I use for my life is, what makes me feel fully alive? And that question there was some discrepancy in what I was doing and that like question. So, I'm like, okay, do I want to do this for another 10 years? And the answer was no. But it was like, okay, well then what do I want to do? like I built this thing, I have this baby, and now I'm saying like, I don't necessarily want to do this for another 10 years. And so one of,
I hate to interrupt you, but I really want to understand what this looks like. I have listeners who are owners of studios, gyms, clients, those kinds of things. When you say do this, what does that look like? What are you moving away from, or what you're doing? I gather you're doing it today, but you're kind of, I don't like the term, but pivoting, you're moving towards something else, and we'll talk about that. I'm not, I'll give you a chance to share that, but tell me what this is.
so this is the gym, and so I'm telling you how I got to what I'm doing now. So this was like running and operating the gym, training clients on the floor, remote clients, all of that stuff. I wasn't sure that I wanted to keep doing that for a while, and so it was a bit unsettling when we're honest with ourselves of like, hey, this isn't probably the next thing. And man, there's this thing that I'm like very optimistic. I gather that you are too, David. We're just like, you just generally see the world in this more positive light naturally. And so I never really thought about when I started that, like, well, what happens if it's over? Like the death of a dream. And that was kind of a really interesting, maybe like a zombie, moment there where you're just like, an interesting learning. But at any rate, one of my clients was like, hey, I went down and I took this course for business coaching. And she was like, I think you should go check it out. I think you would really like it and be good at it. And I was like, okay, cool. She's a very successful business person. Like, I'll go check it out. And what I had realized at that time was like, okay, I do love coaching. I love helping people, but I don't want to teach movement anymore. I don't want to teach people how to squat and push it. Like, that's not interesting to me anymore. It's not fulfilling. But when we have those real conversations about life change, that stuff, I want more of that. So how can I do that? So anyway, I went down, I took this class, and I was like, okay, I could see myself doing this for the next whatever phase, however long that ends up being. And then I jumped in with both feet and, hired multiple coaches. That's always been my motto. Same thing with the gym, like find people who are doing what you want to do, who are amazing at it, and just go learn straight from them if you can, because that's the fastest path to get where you want to go. And then so I did that. And that's what I'm doing now, is working with business owners and helping them, like I said, create a business and a life they love. But more than that, it's creating internal and external freedom. So because I experienced a lot of freedom as a business owner, but a lot of not internal freedom in many ways. And we could dig into that a little bit if you want. But so yeah, I'm helping clients now create very intentionally their life and how they're seeing the world so that they can, get rid of a ton of stress. A lot of the stress that I had in running the gym was self-inflicted. And so I love getting to teach other business owners about how all of that works and help them create freedom.
So what I heard there, your unique value is the fact that this is a journey you've been on, and you as a business owner and balancing that whole life purpose, dream, if you will, with the realities of operating a gym, doing the things, that's one of the things that's often with entrepreneurs is, when you're getting started, you're everything, whether it's a small business or whatever. And yeah, you might have employees, but at the end of the day, if you're the owner, if you're the entrepreneur, it's the buck stops there. And then there's a whole litany of things, when I was in the corporate world, and that's why one of the reasons why it's hard a lot of times for people transitioning from corporate to entrepreneur, if they've grown up in the corporate world, is you can specialize in certain areas. You can find the piece that you really like a lot of times, and you can drill down on that. You can apply to that. And then there's other people. There's a whole company behind doing the things that aren't that inspiring to you, right? But when you're an entrepreneur and the business is yours, and the cost of actually outsourcing or moving all that stuff may be prohibitive, it's often the case that warriors get trapped in 80% of the stuff that they do is not inspiring and only 20% is, and then they go through what you're going through. And it seems to be that you've discovered that your unique value is, number one, knowing that whole world, and you can talk to other business owners maybe, and that can align with that thought process. But let me ask you this: what kind of, so you're working with business owners now, obviously, I'm assuming in your studio you've worked with people to improve their health and their physical condition, and
Yeah.
then you've also probably in your coaching with them even probably helped them, because you said you're positive, right? So you probably given them some encouragement and giving them ways to look at their limitations in a way that maybe they didn't do on their own. That's a good coach does that regardless of what you're coaching. But tell me, what kind of impact are you hoping to have in this new endeavor, if anything were possible? And by the way, I'm a Christian. I believe that all things are possible, and I believe that it's just setting your mind to it. What kind of impact are you hoping to have?
I, honestly, I'm so happy that this like trajectory has brought me to where I am now, because the work that I get to do with people is, while it's not like huge in breadth, the depth of the work that we're doing together now is so rewarding. And like I couldn't I couldn't ask for something better to be spending my time with. I'll give you one or two quick examples of like what I'm hoping to, because the impact that I want to have is like deep impact, because I feel like, I don't know, the world feels like chaos a lot of the time right now, right? We've got all this stuff happening out there, and it feels overwhelming at times to figure out like, well, how am I going to make a difference? Like, I don't know what to do. But I do know how to help one person really well. And if I can help one business owner change their life and how they're seeing the world, then that impacts their family, their employees, right? And we have this amazing ripple effect. Um, so quick story, one of my clients, she came to me for business coaching, life coaching, all this stuff. And one of the first pieces that we do is we identify what is holding us back. So what are the thoughts and things that are limiting us? And so we dig down and we find that a lot of the issues that she's been having are related to like, she's not had great relationships, and it's been tough marriages, and just friends generally, relationships have been kind of tough. And she realizes through this conversation, this work we're doing, that it was something that happened with her mom like a long time ago, and that has created some constraint and limiting beliefs for her in all the rest of her life. And so we go through a process that I have of forgiveness, and we work through this, and she is able to like let some of that go and start really healing from that for the first time in like a long time. And so she hadn't talked to her mom in 10 years. And I kid you not, the next week she gets a call from her mom saying, "Hey, I'm in the hospital." So I was like, wow, timing is amazing. I don't believe that was a coincidence, by the way. So I was like, all right, let me know, like, give me a text, shoot me a text when you buy that plane ticket. And so sure enough, a couple days later, she's like, all right, I bought the plane ticket. She goes out, she flies, she sees her mom for the first time in 10 years. She sits down with her, and they get to have a real conversation. She's like, "Mom, listen, I don't want to worry about any of that anymore. I just want to move forward." And she said she could just see, like physically see the guilt melting off of her mom that she had been holding on to for a very long time. Um, and so you're like how, what is better? What could I possibly be doing that is more important than that? And then you were like, well, how does that help somebody in, like with their business? Because we're everything. Like how we are showing up and how our communication with everyone in our world dramatically affects our business. We can do all these strategies, like, okay, yeah, this strategy and that strategy. But if we don't do the internal stuff that really gives us the freedom, we're just putting band-aids on stuff. It doesn't actually like really create that change. And at the end of the day, what really matters most to us, like relationships with people, right?
Yeah.
So it's just so cool. I love how it's all interconnected, like our business, our everything internally, and like we're not separate. We can't segment that stuff out.
Yeah, your intuition is extremely good, because my life purpose is to change the world one dream at a time. And so the concepts that you just hit on there and the impact are very much aligned with mine. I want to expand the audience for those kinds of things and so on. But the reality of it is the depth and the impact comes with being present with, whether it's your client or your family or whatever, in the moment, and realizing that we're all on that journey of moving towards this ideal. And the ripple effect, Doug Grady, one of my guests, he wrote a book called The Ripple Effect. So changing one thing is one of his, I know one of his taglines is also choose powerfully. And the thing is that these little choices that seem to be disconnected are all, as you say, we're in a quantum world. Even time is, so everything affects everything. And so there's no discrete component when you're working with people. And the other thing you hit on, which to me is also a level of brilliance, is the only thing you can take into eternity as people, and that means relationships. The stuff doesn't matter, which you shared on your journey. You had to jettison a lot of that stuff, and basically the impact is people that look at automations and get this, I work with people with large audiences, and they become disconnected to the fact that a lot of times they're still changing lives one life at a time. They're changing people one life at a time. And if you get away from that, regardless how big your audience is, your impact will diminish. So yeah, that's great. I totally get the impact. I think as you go forward, you can change the world, one dream, one life at a time. So, well, let's do this. I'm going to take another quick break. We're going to come into what I call the land the plane segment. And what I want to hear there is, if we take away, and maybe you've already said it, maybe you've yet to say it, if we take away anything from this podcast, what one or two, three things or whatever you want us to take away? And then how do we stay in touch with you? How do we follow back up with you, since you're in Washington and I'm here in Dallas, and we've got listeners from all over the world? Tell us how we follow up with you. So let's take another quick break, hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright for the audio audience. It's not the getting there, and we'll be right back with David Weaver and the final segment of this episode of Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we're back. And David, that was cool. I really like the alignment. I knew we were aligned already, but it's fun to listen to. It's fun to hear some of the things that I believe in expressed in ways that I didn't think of, and it's beautiful. I love it. So tell us, as I said before the break, what would you like us, if we listen to this whole podcast, your story, everything else, if anything we took away, what would you want it to be?
You are not your emotions. And I I would say the most important thing you could probably learn, I don't want to say 100%, but because maybe I'm wrong, but learning about emotional intelligence and what that means for you can change literally everything in your life. Like the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur that I'm very familiar with, we all are familiar with, doesn't have to be such a huge up and down, more so the big downs that come with that. And the key to that is learning about how you think and how you feel. And so whatever you need to do to educate yourself on that, whether it's reaching out to somebody, reading some books, hiring a coach, whatever, I would say like that's one of the most valuable things you could spend your time doing that will translate into everything, your business, personal life, everything.
Awesome. Yeah, that's extremely powerful. There's a lot of as you say, breaking it down, there's a lot of wisdom in that, understanding how you're feeling, and you aren't your feelings. Love that. You aren't your feelings, although our actions are usually driven by our feelings, but then we have to kind of start to break that down. One of the things I say is the winner is the person who asks the best questions, and many times those questions you need to ask of yourself. You need to ask, or have somebody ask of you, and you answer them, right? Why are you feeling this way? Why are you doing this? And it kind of comes back always to, what are you focused on? And if you're focused on what happened yesterday, or in the case of the person you mentioned, the example you gave of the woman that was still focused on a relationship issue she had with her mother X number of years ago, if that's animating your feelings or your emotions, it generally kind of holds you back in that place. And as we always say, warriors are always moving forward, and we're overcoming those zombies. So that's brilliant. Well, David, how do we stay in touch with you? I know you're, for the Be Connected audience, he's on the Be Connected platform. Strongly encourage you to use the connection generator. David Weaver, there's a few Davids since I'm a David too, but if you put Weaver in there, you might, it should pop up. I know he's relatively new to the platform, so he's going to be building out his profile and stuff, bringing it over from wherever he's got it today. But David, how do we stay in touch with you in addition to Be Connected? How would we find you?
Yeah, there's really two ways that are the best. One is just my website is davidweavercoach.com. Got everything on there that you would expect. There's a free training on there too, if you want to check that out. And then the other place that I'm most active, I'm not super active on social media except for LinkedIn. I do invest time on LinkedIn trying to add value. So you can find me there. There's a link for my LinkedIn profile because there's probably 100 David Weavers on LinkedIn. So it's probably easiest to go to my website and click on the LinkedIn button at the bottom there.
Cool. All right. Well, that's beautiful. And I definitely think that you have, I can tell by the energy that you bring to the questions about impacting people and where you are, that it's clearly your passion. So thank you for sharing. I think that you're going to, just this podcast will share a lot of value for a number of our warrior listeners, and a lot of learnings there. And I probably go back and listen to it a few times myself, because there's brilliance there. And again, appreciate you being here. And for those that are listening, we'll be back next week. But David, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It was great to be here.
Yeah, it's been a great journey, and I know there's a lot more there that we could talk about, and because we had that workshop a few weeks back, and so I know there's a lot of value. So I strongly encourage our listeners to reach out to David, get some more insight, and we'll be back next week, 11 a.m. Central, with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And let's hear the outro of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be back next week with another Warrior story.